installment of Sandy Hook The Deadliest Minute as I continue to investigate the Sandy Hook tragedy. Of course, the disclaimer, this video contains graphic images, viewer discretion is advised.
Adam No Motive Lanza. That's right, no motive, because he had no motive.
Is that true? Adam had no motive? I recall my first video noted two things. Adam's mother was in a similar pose to Charles Whitman's wife and mother when they were photographed after their death. I also noted Adam seems to copy the Columbine killers in shooting out the windows of the classroom. I've now read enough of Adam's chilling writing to know that I was indeed on the right track. Welcome to my latest installment of Sandy Hook The Deadliest Minute, and we're going to be looking into Adam Lanza's mind, and this segment is going to be called Rampage. The first area I began to investigate after completing my look into the shooting itself was a reference in the report to Adam Lanza's online personas, and those are Smiggles, Blarvink, and K&Bread. When I started my research into that, I ran smack dab into a blog, sandyhooklighthouse.wordpress.com. He has done quite a bit of work on Smiggles, and I certainly recommend anybody who wants to learn more about Smiggles visit that blog. There would be no sense in reinventing the wheel. He's done a fantastic job there and very in-depth research. All credit where credit is due, so I'm not taking any of Reed Coleman's credit. I certainly recommend anybody go look at that. So the first thing I need to do is begin to circumstantially build a case that Adam Lanza is Smiggles. And I'm going to start with the report and work my way out in doing that. Adam Lanza frequented the theater. The theater in Danbury, I think it's pronounced Lowe's or Lou's Theaters, which is located on Eagle Road in Danbury Court, is one of the places Adam frequented. And he frequented it there to play a game called Dance Dance Revolution, which is I'm going to show several videos while I'm talking, try to give people an idea what this game is, but it is a very physically demanding game. And it is a video game where you have to, I guess, I've never played it, but I guess you got to follow the steps as they are on the video screen, and you score points doing that. So we're going to start with Book 7, report number 180016. It's an interview with Darren, who is an employee of the theater. According to his statement, sometime in April 2011 was the first time that I met the boy everybody referred to as DDR guy, hereinafter referred to as the shooter. So DDR guy is what they called the shooter. The shooter played the game so much that he had to put a token on the machine indicating that he wanted to play. When that happened, the shooter responded, "Are you going to play?" and stated yes. Then played the game with the shooter, which can be done simultaneously. So as we can see here in this video, it can be played two people at once. At this time, I asked him what his name was and he didn't reply, which made us feel awkward. The following day, the shooter came back and started playing the game with, name redacted, who employees refer to as DDR girl. He also started playing the game with an Asian boy. Stated that they would only come to the theater to play DDR. The shooter would come to the theaters every Friday through Sunday from approximately 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. and play this game for about 4 hours straight. In August 2011, the shooter continued coming Friday through Sunday but started playing from 8 to 10 hours. The last interaction he had with the shooter was August or September 2012, which is basically when Nancy Lanza reported he wouldn't even come out of his room. She would have to email her own son. When the shooter came back to the theater in February 2012, so this is about 10 months before the shooting, he was wearing the same clothes as he always did, gray hoodie and slacks. However, seemed more antisocial, and he no longer played with, redacted, the Asian boy. The last interaction I had with the shooter was August or September 2012. Described the shooter as being more distant than he normally was. As the shooter came back from the restroom, cleaning himself up from sweat, Price approached him and asked him if he was okay. The shooter replied that he didn't have any money, and also stated, "I just don't want to go home right now." Price noticed that the shooter's right sleeve was slightly pulled up and he had a large circular welt on his forearm. After noticing that, he offered the shooter $20 to play the game, which he accepted. The next day at work, Price heard from the manager from the night before, who stated that he had to unplug the game to get the shooter to leave, which he did without incident. Price initially learned about the incident the following Monday after the shooting. When he got to work, some employees approached him and stated, "If reporters ask you any questions, don't answer them." Price then went upstairs and checked on his cell phone, where he had multiple texts from friends telling him that DDR guy was the shooter. Prior to this interview, Price was shown 2 photographs, which he identified as DDR guy. The next one I'm going to read is Book 7, document 179957, and it's an interview with another theater employee named Corey. So his sworn statement says, Corey describes the shooter as a regular who would come to the theater alone, not watch movies, but to specifically play Dance Dance Revolution, which he seems to have mastered at an expert level. He would usually arrive at the theater around 6 and leave around 10 or 11. As he played the game, he would never show any emotion. No matter what the temperature was outside, the shooter would always wear the same clothing, a sweater and pants. The shooter frequented the theater so much that he was deemed DDR boy. He would play the game so much he would sweat profusely, but he still persisted to play. The last time that Davison saw the shooter was sometime in November, about a month before the shooting. Davison initially learned that DDR boy was the shooter after a film crew member recognized him from a photograph on the internet. Okay, so this was a high energy guy. He could play a game a long time, a dancing game a long time. Okay, so his name is redacted out of this report, so I'm just going to call him John. So I'm going to fill in all the redactions with John. Full acquaintance at a movie theater located in Danbury, Connecticut. John stated that during that time they met at the movie theater approximately 3 times a month to play in arcade games. John stated that the only game he played with Adam was Dance Dance Revolution, that they never played any first shooter type games. So that's the only game Adam played there was Dance Dance Revolution. John stated that in playing arcade games, they would have discussions on current topics or conversation involving what was happening in their lives. John stated that as they talked about family, specifically about Adam's relationship with his mother and how it was strained. So he had a strained relationship. Other topics of interest, and this is important, included chimp society, their relationship with humans, and how they treat one another. Another topic of discussion was pedophilia. John stated that Adam once told him that he had, this is also important by the way, Adam had once told him that he had expressed his opinion on an internet blog that pedophilia was a disease and that he needed to be treated and not looked at as evil.
I don't think there should be any age of consent, but since no matter what I say everyone will accuse me of just wanting to justify some latent pedophilia I allegedly have, I will only say that you need to be attracted to prepubescents to be a pedophiliac.
It's sour. It makes my mouth get all tight. It even smells sour.
John stated that he and Adam like to watch movies together. They both enjoyed, this is another important thing to notice, they both enjoyed 1980s and 90s psych thriller type films such as Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, The Thing, and Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So he liked old cheesy horror flicks.
Trash! 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 Just like your father.
No!
Oh, yes, he got away, but you won't. You'll pay. You'll suffer.
No! You'll have to suffer now!
She's evil. She can't hurt you now. We'll help you punish her. We'll help you.
That's right. I have my friends with me. If she doesn't stop it, I'll punish her again. You hear that, old lady? I'll punish you again! Did you hear me? Did you hear what I said? Don't you ever talk to me like that! That's better. Don't make me do anything bad, Mother. You laughing at me? You think I'm crazy for talking to my mother like that? You're all bitches. Selfish and vain. Don't you dare laugh at me. I won't stand for impudence from any of you. And stop trying to scare me all the time.
John stated that Adam also used computers to play games and communicate. Says he stopped talking with Adam sometime in June 2012. They became involved in a disagreement. Okay, the next document we have is also Book 7. It's document 109765, and it's an email from Redacted. Based on this email, we can deduce that this email came from who I was calling John, which was Adam's friend. So this is an email the police received from this guy. I'm not going to go through every topic they discussed, but I highlighted some of them that I find important. Some of the topics: chimps, human nature, judgment, prejudice, empathy, suicide, asexuality.
I used to think that I was asexual, but the primary reason why I thought that was because my body mass index was 14.
Mr. M with a munching mouth. My mouth must munch, munch, munch. My mouth has lunch, lunch, lunch. I munch from morning to midnight, midnight to morning, munching mouth. I'm Mr. M.
Judgment, prejudice, empathy, suicide, asexuality, pedophilia, family, mental illness, depression, and cooking. Emotion wasn't something expressed in particularly verbose or grandiose fashion. He's capable of laughing, smiling, and making jokes, though always in a dry fashion. He used to like to go hiking, make jokes on kidnapping and disappearances on both our parts. Adam's childhood rarely came up. The times it did come up were related to jokes made about Adam's weight. And as we're going to get into, Adam was an anorexic. So we all know he weighed about 113 pounds when he died. As the game we were playing was one that required a very skinny guy. And we know he was a vegetarian. And this was his exercise for weight loss. So this guy is an anorexic. He definitely has issues regarding weight. The joke that revolved around me was that I was too old and my body was too old and too tired to keep up with the songs that required the most agility. So they would talk about how this guy couldn't keep up with Adam. The joke about Adam was that he was too fat, and obviously from his diet and stature, this is him writing, one can immediately tell that he was not. It was a cause of concern because at times he did not seem to properly hydrate, or really seem to maintain the diet that would hold up his body for the physical activity he was doing. So he was concerned that Adam's fluid and food intake was not matching the physical activity he was putting out. People who played the game a large amount of times would build up a lot of stamina. I had taken time off between playing the game and had done a poor job of exercising, so I could no longer keep up with Adam. Adam did drink water with a certain amount of salt, and Adam sometimes said he would just eat the salt plain. One quirk was that physical exhaustion only seemed to affect him when he was really floored. He didn't really exhibit any of the other signs, heavy breathing, face flush, etc. until then. So he could go. This may be related to reports that he was not particularly aware of his own physical state in terms of pain, etc. To expand on the joke of Adam being fat and how it related to him as a child, he told me that when he was young he looked a lot bulkier. So we have this picture that is K in toddler. Had issues thinking he was fat when he was a child. Adam had kept hamsters, so this is important to note about the hamsters, by the way, so either he or I likened it to rodents stuffing their cheeks full of food. Adam was generally very specific about the clothes he wore. He would keep a change of hoods and sweatshirt in his car in case he needed to replace a sweat-soaked clothes. He would keep his hair generally around eye length and would get his hair cut every couple of months. He wore a hat. He was aware and did pay attention to his physical appearance. Skin health came up once. We had a lot of discussions about human nature, perception, human judgment, and perspective, etc. This is related to morals as a construct in societies and groups forcing their wills on one another. Adam would seem to adopt a very nihilist take on things. He was particularly interested in chimp society and was very specific about chimps and not monkeys or gargantuans, etc. He once sent me videos about how chimps solve problems in their own societies. Empathy was something Adam was capable of, and at least had a concept and seemed to have good impressions about, which leads me to question the reports of Asperger's and such. So this boy questioned Asperger's. Mental illness was a topic that would come up. Mental health may be a better way of phrasing it. There were many times when we both tried to help one another deal with whatever problems we had by talking about it and putting these problems into proper perspective. Advice could be given from both parties and usually met with acceptance rather than defensiveness. I don't remember if Adam said he'd been diagnosed with anything. I do recall talking about psychologists at one point and how he never found them to be much. Adam would tell me about the discussions he had on YouTube, how he had issues of mental illness such as mental health, and the opinions that people would have on other such issues was something Adam would talk about. He would tell me about the discussions he had on YouTube and how the stance he had on the issues of mental illness, such as pedophilia, would cause others to make snap judgments about him as an apologist. I recall telling him that these were taboo subjects and they were very polarizing. I also recall him talking about deleting the comments he made later and saying it had been a waste of time. And we're going to see this a lot. Adam deletes a lot of stuff he writes. Luckily, when you post on a message board, people would quote him, so we still have what he said, but he would go back and delete his post, so that's important to note. any sort of horror film we would watch always had some sort of psychological aspect. So he liked the psychological thrillers. He had a wide knowledge of those films from 80s and 90s, B-type horror films, most likely all straight to VHS type stuff. So those were some of the things Adam liked to talk about. Adam destroyed his hard drive. It's well known he destroyed his hard drive. What's not so well known, unless you've looked into this, is that they found an external hard drive. And on that external hard drive was a lot of stuff that Adam had left on there. This is in Book 4, document 194691. On this external hard drive, he had bookmarks. They were bookmarks pertaining to firearms, military, politics, video games, mass murder, killing spree, Army Ranger, ammunition, webpage on hamster healthcare. So that matches up with what that email had said. Images of a hamster. Quite a bit of hamster stuff. 172 screenshots of an online game Adam played called Combat Arms, including gamer tag K-Inbred. And he was a member of the clan tag MG14C. Also, in a folder called Desktop, he has, so this was probably a backup of his computer. So images of an abandoned house and Dance Dance Revolution screenshots. Okay, in a folder called Fun, images of a black Honda Civic, images of the shooter holding a handgun to his head, images of a shooter holding a rifle to his head, videos of the shooter playing DDR, and I call on the Connecticut State Police to release these things. This is very important stuff for us to see here. This guy didn't just fall out of the sky and walk in and shoot up a school. This is, he has a history and we can find it here. 5-second video entitled Postal, depicting children being shot. Images of the shooter holding a rifle and shotgun and numerous magazines contained within his pockets. So these are dress rehearsal pictures that the Connecticut State Police have, as far as I'm concerned. He wrote out several text files. One is organized, a document written on weapons and magazine capacity. Document written on James Hubbardy, shooter.
On July 18, 1984, patrons and employees at this McDonald's in San Isidro, California, are easy prey for James Huberty, a man on a rampage. Did you understand what he said in English?
Yeah. He said, I killed 1,000. They're going to kill 1,000 more.
Hiding in a tiny utility closet where they have been trapped for almost an hour, Wendy Flanagan and Albert Leos, two McDonald's employees, listen as Huberty continues his siege.
Every person I had to hear scream and beg for their life, or mothers begging for their baby's life when a baby would be crying and he would start yelling for them to shut up, and the mother would beg, and you'd hear all the gunfire and screaming and then quiet, you know, and
I think I counted about 125 to 130 shots that he fired before I lost count.
Capacity. Document written on James Hubbardy, shooter. Interview transcript. P-Bear, a document written advocating pedophiles' rights and the liberation of children. Rampage, which is where I got the name for this segment of my videos. Document written showing the prerequisites for mass murder. Spreadsheet. It's also a movie that is an online movie that we can get into, but he didn't. He chose that name based, I believe, on the movie that's out there called Rampage.
How about Mad Bomber? He has been here for 3 years and he still has not gone on a rampage. I thought he would have been on my catalog of mass murderers by now.
Reviews, document written reviewing horror films. I think they should release that. Some writings. Babies. Contains 2 fictional writings of being attacked by babies and attempts to defend against them. So these are what he wrote about. Lovebound, a screenplay or script depicting a relationship between a 10-year-old boy and a 30-year-old man. Had a profile of a pedophile. Vorin Valerian Soldat, that's a movie depicting a man-boy relationship. Colgam 01, it's his spreadsheet ranking mass murders by name, number killed, numbered injured, types of weapons used, and disposition. So he had this laid out, and that's going to be important in a Smiggles post you'll see later. Me, an 8-page Word document detailing relationships, ideal companion, culture, voting, personal beliefs, describes doctors touching children as rape. So remember that again as we get into Smiggles posts.
therapists are secular priests who assert that they have some truth, and if your values deviate, then you are wrong. Hence, the rapist. They impose their values onto you through their mind-fucking. Literature is simply another coping mechanism for children who've been mind-fucked by cultural therapists. They're carried to other worlds in a stream of semen.
Tomorrow, a Word document detailing daily schedule, desires, list of benefits, being thin, negative connotations associated with being overweight, list of goals, and a list of vocabulary words. A Word document detailing how marriage is abusive and negative to people in a relationship.
Marriage is a mutually destructive cultural delusion.
Some video game stuff associated with the game Grand Theft Auto. Older type stuff he was interested in. Under his document My Pictures, numerous images of firearms and ammunition, several images of world maps and demographic information, images that contain a list of mass murders broken down into categories by numbers of victims killed. Very interested in numbers during mass murders. An image, presumably of the shooter, Kay and toddler, and I believe it to be this photo right here that we've all seen, holding a toy gun. Images of nature, tech club members, Columbine High School related images. In his Real Player downloads, he had clips from the show The Whitest Kids You Know, several video clips pertaining to Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, Columbine High School, videos of hamsters, remember that, Cleveland school shooting and surveillance video, and remember that.
I just came across this one which includes a ton of footage I've never seen elsewhere. It even shows some of Patrick Purdy's fabled army men.
Robert Hawkins stuff. You're going to have to remember that name. 2 videos showing suicide, self-inflicted gunshot. Numerous video clips from various comedy networks. The Kip Kinkle, who is another mass shooter, audio only. Smiggles and such. Instant message history with 16-bit Elder, The Stranger, and Smiggles, presumably the shooter, from December 2010 to February 2011. Discussion that focuses on gaming, homosexual fantasies, and day-to-day activities. And that is where we start on the trail of Smiggles. Stuff on TNT ingredients, weapons, firearms, manuals, holsters, guns, Sega 12, and ammunition under a folder called Mass, really short for mass murder, a subfolder called Call, which is certainly short for Columbine, hundreds of documents, images, videos pertaining to the Columbine High School massacre, including what appears to be a complete copy of the investigation. Documents on mass murder. George Sodini, he's another mass murderer. Documents on Sodini's life. Selfish, a Word document explaining why females are selfish. Politics stuff, FDR, Ron Paul, gun control, and capitalism. One of those things is not like the other. Videos, numerous video clips depicting puppets. Remember that one?
Like Maynard. He's feeling blue. Let's listen to his song, and maybe he'll tell us why.
I'm so blue. I said I'm so blue. I used to be yellow. Now I'm laid back and mellow. When I was young, I was red hot. Always trying to be a big shot.
Numerous video clips showing guns being fired. Several movie files including Bloody Wednesday and Rampage, both which depict an individual carrying out mass shooting sprees. Anime videos, videos of the shooter playing DDR, videos with dancing pedo bear, and I'm almost afraid to even Google what that is, so I'll have to decide if I even want to do that. I don't want to have the NSA come track me down or whatever. Several video clips of an online game from World of Warcraft with the character Blarvink. In the report they did do search warrants on the World of Warcraft and combat arms on Blarvink. An amateur computer game entitled School Shooting, where the player controls a character who enters a school and shoots students, so you had that on it.
But those games involve war situations or killing an armed bad guy. School Shooter is different.
Here's your objective.
The object of the game is to murder as many defenseless students and teachers as possible. Another big part of the controversy, the game emulates actual school shooting tragedies. The player in the game uses the same weapons as the Columbine shooters did. After completing the spree, the player is even encouraged to commit suicide before being captured by law enforcement officials.
Play a Word document written by the shooter. Former male characters have delusional discussion, and ultimately all but one end up being killed. So knowing that one of his usernames is Smiggles, in the report summary, the police list one of the internet blogs on which the shooter posted focused on mass shootings, and in particular the Columbine shootings. The shooter also exchanged emails with others who are interested in the topic of mass shooting. So that leads us to Shock Beyond Belief, the new home of the Super Columbine Massacre RPG discussion forum. So an RPG is a role-player game, so this is a message board for focusing on Columbine. And there is a user named Smiggles. And to build the circumstantial case, you have to start comparing what's known about Adam Lanza with his postings here. And then once you realize that Smiggles is Adam Lanza, then you start to get into the depth of how sick of a mind he had.
Okay, but I'll wait right here for you, okay?
Hi, aren't you Happy Clown?
No.
Well, are you sure you look like Happy Clown?
I may look happy on the outside, but I'm not very happy on the inside.
How come you're not happy on the inside?
Well, I feel like no one loves me.
Now, the first thing that was pieced together has been picked up by the national news, and that is a radio call-in program. And I went into that in my supplemental video where he makes a call into a radio program. I'm going to read this. This comes from the Sandy Hook Lighthouse. A frequent subject of .wordpress.com and a frequent subject of Smiggles' posts were the merits of Wild Chimpanzee Society, an interest of Lanza's, also noted numerous times. So from the report, we go to shockbeyondbelief.com. There's a poster named Smiggles there. And a frequent subject of Smiggles' posts were the merits of Wild Chimpanzee Society. I'm reading straight from Sandy Hook Lighthouse. An interest of Lanza's also noted numerous times in the Sandy Hook report. So that goes back to our witness statements that was one of his interests. And so through that, so on December 10th, 2011, 10 days before he calls press, he made a phone call, or he is alleged to have made a phone call into John Zerzin's radio program. And he calls in and talks about Travis the chimp. So 10 days before that call, he posts on the shockbeyondbelief.com, I should call in on John Zerzin's radio program about Travis. That's Travis the chimps. I'm really surprised that I haven't been able to find anything he's written or said about the incident, considering how often he brings up random acts of violence. Seems like Travis would be a poster chimp of his philosophy. Finally, on December 20th, the day after the call from Greg, Smiggles posts a link to the show reviewing his performance. And he says, my call starts at 38 minutes, and then it posts a link to the call. And we have that call in my other video. I have a supplemental video on that call. It didn't go as horribly as I anticipated. I wish I hadn't spoken nonstop about Travis for so long, but I didn't want to seem crazy by randomly bringing up a chimpanzee for unknown reasons. Despite my failed attempt at having a normal voice, I at least sounded less incoherent than usual. I normally speak much softer and swifter with less articulation, less inflection, and more mumbling. And he concludes based on that Smiggles and Adam are the same person, and I agree with that conclusion. But we're going to keep going because there's quite a bit of more circumstantial evidence to go into. But I'm going to say that's it for this video. And we're going to leave it with the conclusion regarding his stamina for playing DDR, and that Adam Lanza is very likely Smiggles, and I would say he is for sure Smiggles. And we're going to continue our look into this by looking into Smiggles more in depth in another video. So that's it for this one.
Hello, We get the collapsible headphones here, but we're back.
Sorry, we got Greg on the phone.
Oh, Greg. Okay. How's it going?
Hi, good. I'm a fan of your writing.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
sorry
you
to
very
bring up such an old news story, but I couldn't find anything that you said about the topic, and it seems relevant to your interest, so I thought I would bring up Travis the chimp. Do you remember him?
I don't.
Well, he was a highly domesticated chimpanzee who lived in a suburban home in Stamford, Connecticut.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
And he was raised just like a human child starting from the week he was born. By the time that he was 14 years old, which would be somewhere around age 20 in human years, he slept in a bed, he took his own baths, he dressed himself, he brushed his teeth with an electric toothbrush.
Really? When was this?
Well, this happened in early 2009.
Oh.
He ate his meals at a table and enjoyed human foods like ice cream. And he used a remote control to watch television and liked baseball games. And he even used a computer to look at pictures on the internet.
Huh.
And it goes without saying that Travis was very overweight. He was 200 pounds when he should have been around the low hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
And he was actually taking Xanax.
Amazing.
I couldn't find any information about why he was taking it, but it just seems to say a lot that he was given it at all. And basically, I think Travis wasn't really any different than a mentally handicapped human child. But anyway, one day in February 2009, he was acting very agitated, and at some point grabbed his owner's car keys, went outside and started leaping from car to car, apparently wanting to go for a car ride. And he was acting very aggressively, so his owner called her friend over to get her to help him to calm down and go back inside. And once she arrived, he immediately attacked her, and his owner tried to stop him, but couldn't, and she even resorted to stabbing him with a knife, but nothing worked. And she said that after she stabbed him, he looked at her as if to say, "Why'd you do that to me, Mom?" Because apparently that was what their relationship was like, no different than between a human mother and a human child. So after the stabbing, she called the police, who arrived 12 minutes after the attack, at which point her friend was pretty close to dead. And once the cruiser came up, Travis went over to it, tried to open the locked passenger door. He smashed off the side view mirror, went over to the driver's door, opened it, and the cop shot him. He fled back into the house, where he went to his playroom and bled to death. And this might not seem very relevant, but I'm bringing it up because afterward, everyone was condemning his owner for saying how irresponsible she was for raising a chimp like it was a child, and that she should have known something like this would happen because chimps aren't supposed to be living in civilization. They're supposed to be living in the wild among each other. But their criticism stops there, and the implication is that there's no way anything could have gone wrong in his life if he had been living in civilization as a human rather than a chimp.
Indeed.
I'm so interested in Travis because he brings up questions about this whole process of child raising. Isn't something which just happens to gently exist without us having to do anything, because every newborn child, human child, is born in a chimp-like state, and civilization is only sustained by conditioning them for years on end so that they'll accept it for what it is. And since we've gone through this conditioning, we can observe a human family raising a human child, and I'm sure that even you have trouble intuitively seeing it as something unnatural. But when we see a chimp in that position, we viscerally know that there's something profoundly wrong with the situation. And it's easy to say there's something wrong with it simply because it's a chimp, but what's the real difference between us and our closest relatives? Travis wasn't an untamed monster at all. He wasn't just feigning domestication, he was civilized. He was able to integrate into society. He was a chimp actor when he was younger, and his owner drove him around the city frequently in association with her towing business, where he met many different people and got along with everyone. If Travis had been some nasty monster all his life, it would have been widely reported, but to the contrary, it seems like everyone who knew him said how shocked they were that Travis had been so savage, because they knew him as a sweet child. And there were 2 isolated incidents early in his life when he acted aggressively, but summarizing them would take too long, so basically I'll just say that he didn't act really any differently than a human child would, and the people who would use that as an indictment against having chimps live as humans do wouldn't apply the same thing to humans, so it's just kind of irrelevant. But anyway, look what civilization did to him. It had the same exact effect on him as it has on humans. He was profoundly sick in every sense of the term, and he had to resort to these surrogate activities like watching baseball and looking at pictures on a computer screen and taking Xanax. He was a complete mess. And his attack wasn't simply because he was a senselessly violent, impulsive chimp, which was how his behavior was universally portrayed. Immediately before his attack, he had desperately been wanting his owner to drive him somewhere. And the best reason I can think of for why he would want that, looking at his entire life, would be that some little thing he experienced was the last straw, and he was overwhelmed by the life that he had, and he wanted to get out of it by changing his environment, and the best way that he knew how to deal with that was by getting his owner to drive him somewhere else.
Yeah.
And when his owner's friend arrived, he knew that she was trying to coax him back into his life of domestication, and he couldn't handle that, so he attacked her and anyone else who approached him. And dismissing his attack as simply being the senseless, violent impulsiveness of a chimp instead of a human is wishful thinking at best. His attack can be seen entirely parallel to the attacks and random acts of violence that you bring up on your show every week, committed by humans, which the mainstream also has no explanation for. And if
No.
he's an actual human, I just don't think it would be such a stretch to say that he very well could have been a teenage mall shooter or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Wow. Thank you, Greg.
yeah,
That's quite a story. Yeah, that's really apropos, isn't it? Travis the chimp.
it's just that I'm a little surprised that I never heard you bring it up at all, because maybe I'm just seeing connections where there aren't any, but
Not. I think not. No, I didn't catch that one. I didn't. Maybe I was out of the country or something. I don't know, but I missed it. Thanks very much, man.
thank you.
Take
Bye.
care. Wow, very well articulated, I think. Okay, well, I guess we better move on.